Kegel, you did it.
I did my best. This is what you know what I say. I'm not the best, but I'm just better than the rest.
Hey, listen, technology today, it's not the easiest thing. It is
No,
not the easiest thing.
no.
So if you're watching us now, this is Adam Kegel,
That's
who
me.
is our grand host of the Jewish Humor website, right? Facebook
Right.
page. And
Yes.
I'm Brad Graber. I'm your author of the book Boca by Moonlight, which I guess I should hold up right now. That's Boca by Moonlight. Can everybody see? I should take my hand away.
That's a really nice looking cover.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And we're here today to just talk, and I'm very grateful to Adam for really giving me the opportunity to really meet with everybody and have a chance to talk a little bit about being an author and coming out with this book and what the book is about. It's been a very supportive group so far. People have been very kind. You see me post from time to time, I think, and I try to be funny because it is a humor web page, even though people have periodically said, "You're not funny. Why are you posting in here?" But I try to be funny. And, it's like they always say, and Adam, you know this, the minute you try to be funny, you're dead in the water. So we're going to just try to be serious maybe a little bit and talk about the book and about where I've been and what I've done. So are you comfortable, Adam?
I am. I'm sitting in my office chair in my office in front of my laptop computer where I always do my shtick in front of to the Jewish Humor group and entertain the best I can. Let me ask you a couple questions, Brad.
Sure.
First, tell us where you grew up.
Well, I'm originally from New York. So I'm from New York City. I was born in the Bronx and I was raised in Queens. And I am, like all of you folks, a bar mitzvah boy. I did a bar mitzvah boy with a blue, sparkly bar mitzvah jacket. So I'm one of those guys who had his bar mitzvah at Leonard's on Long Island. So if you're from New York, most people probably know Leonard's. So that's who I am. I went to school in Buffalo, so SUNY at Buffalo, and I did my undergrad, and then I went for my master's at Washington University in St. Louis. So I've kind of lived all over, went to school all over, and that's a little bit about my background. But I come from the same kind of family that everybody else comes from, in terms of being a Jewish close-knit family. In my family, unfortunately, the men tend to outlive the women. I think we kill them with aggravation. Truly, the men outlive the women. And let me tell you, there is nothing sadder than a group of men that are left to their own. It's very hard to do a Thanksgiving when you have only men in the family. Somebody's got to make the meal, right?
True. So that's you hire a chef.
True.
Yeah, but Jewish chef.
A Jewish chef. So I come from that kind of a background. And really that helped inspire the book because I really wanted to talk a little bit about men and their relationships and how men manage after being in long-term marriages, because everybody in my family are long-term marriage people.
Okay.
They do bury the women, but they bury the women after 32 years, 35 years. So the women really have a long time to suffer through that, if you will. But we tend to do that. So I've seen a lot of men that are kind of lost, because really oftentimes the wife is their best friend or their main connection to the family. Adam, from your mother, I'm sure.
Yes.
Moms keep families going. Sure. And so it's kind of interesting in a circumstance where men are sort of, have to take a breath and figure out their friendships and relationships. So, yeah.
Tell me, Brad, did you always want to be an author?
Well, I always listened to everything everybody had to say. I was a very quiet kid. And I grew up in an 8-story apartment building with 22 apartments on a floor. My mother was very social. So I heard a lot of stories. And there was a central laundry room where all the stories were being told. And so, your mom would send you downstairs to pick up the laundry, and, a little boy would run in and run out really quickly, but you couldn't help but hear all these stories about all these people. And then, of course, in the elevator, you would listen to all the stories. And people only had like 3 minutes, in an elevator ride to tell a quick story. Somebody would say, so tell me, what happened with your mother? How's your grandmother? And you had to be quick. So for me, I always loved to tell stories. I grew up on it. And that really was part of the reason why I wanted to be an author. I thought that would be fun.
Yeah, we do have a question from one of our members, and it says, do you have a favorite author, they're asking?
I've been reading a lot lately. Well, not lately. I've always read a lot. Okay. One of the people that I just finished reading, Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Tolls. And if you're interested in the Russian Revolution and the impact of people, this is a story of one man account and how he survives the Russian Revolution, being forced to live in the Metropole Hotel in Moscow. And it's really, I thought it was a great book. I really loved it. The other thing that and I've read a whole bunch lately, but I loved A Beautiful Boy. So that's a story of a father and son. His son struggles with drug addiction. And so that's also another wonderful, wonderful book. But those are two that sort of come to mind pretty quickly.
Did they make a movie from that book?
Yeah, they did. They did. I think I can't remember the actor.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody will be able to jump in and talk about that. But they did make a movie with that, and it was really it's so relevant, especially today.
Yeah,
people do have those kind of issues with drugs and in the family, even mental health issues where parents, struggle with that. So, yeah.
So how many books have you written so far, Brad?
How many books? What a good question. Who thought that question up? I've written 3 books, actually. So my debut novel is called The Intersect. I don't know if you can see it there.
We see it, yeah.
Yeah, and so that book is about strangers who reach out and make a connection. And I'm really interested in, I write about family, I write about life, I write about relationships, and I'm always interested in what drives people to make the decisions they make in life. And so The Intersect is a story about a woman who is in a facility, and she is, if you will, released, returns home, and finds that her home has been sold. So that's how that book starts. But it's really multiple stories connecting that really touch on the lives of folks in 2010. So there's a lot there about immigration. There's a lot there about, just life in general. That's my debut novel. And then my second book is called After the Fall. And it's kind of young adult, coming of age. It isn't really a young adult book per se, but it's a story of a young girl who can't remember her mother. And so she goes on this journey to try to find out what happened to her mom. And she's being raised by a grandmother who doesn't really want to talk about the past, which is why she's got to reach out. And she finds a distant uncle, and through that, she learns the story of her mother. So that's really another book. And then, of course, there's my third book. And I don't think you've ever seen this, but this is called What's That Growing in My Sour Cream? Okay.
That's a funny title.
Yeah, it is a funny title. I write essays, and I do like a humor blog. I'm a big fan of Seinfeld, and I love the Golden Girls, and I like Irma Bombeck. I'm just a pushover for all that stuff. So What's That Growing My Sour Cream is really a collection of over 70 essays, and I'll just hold it up again. You can see how funny that cover is.
It is.
They're humor essays, and it's over 70 essays, and it's really about things like, is Mahjong the true game of champions? And I talk about, what would your dog say if he could talk? Is COVID a good name for a dog? I go through all these kinds of items like, do good things come to those who wait? Why is it difficult to change the bed sheets? Were you raised in a barn? This is all the stuff that I always heard growing up. Are you too old to change? 10 reasons why your workout may not be working out. So I write this humor blog, and I do it every month. And Adam, I think you're on the list now.
Yes,
And I send it out every month with,
right.
for free. And I have over 3,000 subscribers across the country. So it's really done quite well. I'm hoping to get to 10,000 because, you know how it is. We're always like trying to grow our business. Because you've got, and it's amazing what you've done because you've got over 200,000 subscribers, which is absolutely astounding.
Well, Tony Robbins once said, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah, I guess that's true. He must have been talking about my gut, though. Was he referring to that? Because that's kind of growing, too. Anyway, so I write a...
Let me ask you another question. What inspired you to write Boca by Moonlight?
Yeah. Well, okay. My mother died at 58. So my dad was a widower at 60. And my dad had been married. They were married about 38 years. They married very young. And when my dad was a widower, within a year, he had more dates than he could imagine.
Wow.
I mean, within 6 months, they were lining up outside his door. And,
what was the secret sauce?
What was the secret sauce?
How did he get all these women?
He didn't know either, and neither did I, to tell you the truth. Yeah. And so my dad wound up marrying a very, very wealthy woman in Boca Raton. To be honest, he had his pick of anyone, and I think he sort of decided that if you're going to get married a second time, marry a woman you like. And if she has money, it's not a terrible thing. No. And so my dad lived on the grounds of the Boca Raton Hotel and Country Club. So when we would go visit, it's a very exclusive 5-star property. The gate would go up whenever you said the name Graber, and I'd be like, what? They're letting us in? No, this can't be. Because I really grew up very lower middle class, 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. But my dad had this wonderful lifestyle and an amazing group of friends and people that just gathered around. So it gave me a real insight into Boca Raton. And I thought it would be a great place to, point the story. Because the story really is about people like us in our 50s and 60s who are suddenly, they're on their own. So you're in the dating world and, you have to sort of figure life out. Sure. And so I wrapped that book around the concept. The plot is about 3 guys who go to a funeral of their friend, and the funeral is packed with women. Their friend, they didn't think was such a, hotsy-totsy guy. And the place is packed. And then the rabbi comes out and says, gentlemen, come here. The family has failed to show for the funeral, and the check to the mortuary is bounced. So these guys have to chip in and pay for the funeral, which, of course, they're outraged. I mean, our friend was a wealthy guy. How could the check bounce? Where's the family? And that begins their journey. And as they go on their journey, they begin to discover something that most men probably know, that sometimes their friendships aren't as deep as they need to be. Sometimes they're not always listening to each other. Sure. So they're going to learn a little bit about that process. I mean, they realize, because they've been playing golf for years, they don't even know who their siblings are. They don't know who their friend's family is really. So it's kind of an interesting journey, to find out about friendship and family and what's important. And these guys certainly learn that.
I think relationships and family are important. In my mind, they're the most important people in your life.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question, Brad.
Yeah.
What were you thinking of writing a book with Jewish themes?
Well, I did think about it. It really is broader than just Jewish themes, but I am a Jewish author. So everything I bring to my books, now in this book, you know who you're dealing with because it's Boca Raton.
Of course.
Right. But everything that I bring is kind of, I bring a lot of that culture of what we were raised with. I had a grandmother who used to say a lot of interesting things. So I've tried to put them in the book. And one of the characters, Benny, he's always quoting his grandmother, So his grandmother has this saying, and this is one of the favorite ones I gave Benny, but it was my grandmother. She used to say, "You're born with the face God gave you. You wind up with the face you deserve." And so that always was like, what does that mean? Why are you saying that? Yeah. It sounded almost like a Jewish curse in a way,
Right.
So yes, I try to target a lot of the stuff to my background and what I'm experienced with. Yeah.
Which leads into my next question. Is your novel considered funny?
Oh, that hurt. Well, I think it's considered poignant. It's funny at points, at moments. It certainly is funny. There are things like, they say, one of the guys turns to the other and says, "Do you think realtor is code for divorcee?" So there are those whimsical moments in the book, but I think the book really is heartfelt. It's really kind of a heartfelt novel. It has humor in it, like all good things do, and you're going to laugh here and there, but I think it's really poignant. That's really where it is. Yeah.
Okay. Another question. What lessons can be learned from the novel?
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier about how important family really is. Yeah. And I think that, what I learned in my family is, especially with my dad, that even once a parent is gone, it's almost like rebuilding a relationship with that other parent. It isn't that you weren't close with them before, but when your mother is taken out of the picture, you really have to rebuild your relationship, because suddenly, Dad's been spending 38 years waiting for your mother to ask the next question, and now Dad has to do it. Dad has to do the work.
Right.
So that's kind of. Now, did you lose your dad first or your mom?
It was my dad. Lost when I was 21. He was 64. Died of a massive stroke. He had a store on the main, which is St. Lawrence Boulevard in Montreal.
Yeah.
I was in Israel at the time, and he was sandwiched between two shoe stores. On one side there was a Jewish shoe store owner. On the other side was a Greek shoe store owner.
Yeah.
But the Greek was never doing as good as the Jewish shoe store owner. So, and he was always looking at what he's putting on his window, what he's putting for sale. And, he was always struggling, the Greek shoe store owner. So I think in the end, he decided that maybe just put the Greek lightning, put the store on fire and the building on fire, which is what he did. Oh. And unfortunately, sadly, my father's store was right next door, and those old buildings are like matchboxes. And when one building burns, then there were like 4 buildings that pretty much were demolished by the fire. And it kind of destroyed my father. It was his livelihood for 20 odd years. And, when he went to see the fire, he was interviewed by a reporter from the newspaper. And he said, "I almost had a heart attack when I saw the fire," and it was very stressful for him. And he suffered from high blood pressure. And my mom, not knowing any better, was feeding him all kinds of high cholesterol foods like that he liked, with chicken fats and schmaltz and sour cream and all this stuff. And he suffered from high blood pressure and cholesterol. And when you're suffering from those kind of ailments and you're eating a diet that's heavy in saturated fat, it's a recipe for disaster. So that combined with the stress, so he passed away on what we call here Remembrance Day, which is, I think, on November 11th, if I'm not mistaken. It's significant in the United States as well. Is it not November 11th? Do you know? I think it is.
No, I don't know.
I think November 11th has some significance in the U.S. too. It escapes me now. And then my mom passed away 10 years ago sadly from Alzheimer's. She was 89, so she lived a little longer, but they were both Holocaust survivors. And, they had a tough life. But
did your mom ever talk about her experience or?
a bit, and I did mention what I know in the Jewish Humor group about how she survived. It really is a miracle how she did survive. From what she told me, she was in a ghetto, and somehow her parents encouraged her to escape if she could, and so she managed with some friends to escape the ghetto, and they ran into the woods, and her friends hid in the woods of Poland for 4 years. Imagine. Poland has got the winters as cold as where I live in Canada. I'd say it's Canadian. I mean, it gets pretty cold, and so I don't know. She said that they made little fires. They didn't want to make too big a fire because it would alert the Nazis, attract the Nazis because they would see smoke. She had a very tough life, my mother, surviving, and then after the war, she was sick. She had tuberculosis, and she was married. Her first husband passed away, left her with a small baby, which was my half-sister, which I didn't even know was my half-sister till I was 18. My parents kept it a secret. It was my other biological sister who told me. So that's a little bit of background of my parents. And my father, from what I understand, he fought with the Russians' resistance, partisans, against the Nazis. But, they suffered. They lost a lot. They lost pretty much all their family. My mother was a family of 8 siblings, and only her and her brother were the only survivors. Her brother was made to work in the concentration camp as a tailor because he was able to sew uniforms for the Nazis, and that's why they kept him alive. Otherwise, they would have sent him to the gas chambers, I'm sure. So, but he survived, and my mom survived, and after the war, they made their lives what they did.
Yeah, it's interesting, Adam, because my family was over here, but really until recently, I hadn't thought. My dad was born in 1929, my mother in 31, and had they been born over in Europe, they probably wouldn't have survived. And
you never know. Maybe
you don't realize that.
Likely not, because the chances of surviving if you were Jewish and you were in Europe in the 1930s and 40s were slim, very slim. But there were obviously survivors. The Jewish population before World War II, I'm not sure, was about 14, 15 million people. Yeah. And 70, how many years has the war ended? In 1945, 65 and 21, like 81, 82 years later. Yeah. The Jewish population is pretty much what it was prior to World War II. Yeah. But what always comes to my mind is that of all the Jews that were murdered, how many of them could have become comedians? How many of them could have become physicians and done amazing things? How many of their offspring could have contributed to society? I mean, this was such a tremendous loss. In my mind, maybe I'm biased. I am biased, but I still think that the Jews contribute more to the world than any other race or religion, and it's witnessed by all the Nobel Prizes they receive and all these various departments, whether it be in medicine or whether it be in peace or technology. I mean, we're very bright people and very, very proud. Anyway, let's get back to your book. How did you come up with the title Boca? Or did we talk about that?
Yeah, we sort of did. I Boca by Moonlight. He looks up at the moon when his wife dies and realizes, because he's a widower. So, he has this moment. So that plays out quite a bit. I see that there are some questions here.
Yes,
so,
there are. Why do men remarry more quickly than women is one of the questions.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason may be women are more independent than men. I think that may be the reason. I know in my family, the men were so confused after their wives died that they needed so much guidance and, assistance and redirection. So, I think it's rare in our generation for men to be able to, really, they're used to their wives directing them and moving them around and helping them through life, don't you think? And so without a wife, sometimes you need to get one real quick.
Yeah.
And
It all depends on, how you feel about, living life as a single man or, as a couple.
yeah.
I know a lot about relationships, but we won't go there. It's for another time.
But I do think a lot of women are willing to be single more than a lot of men, and I don't know if maybe they've just had enough, or whatever.
Yeah.
But women are just more willing to do that.
Yes. Do have a few more questions. Someone asked, you have any new projects on the horizon?
Yeah, well, I do. I have a couple of speaking engagements coming up. I'm going to be in Skokie, Illinois, talking to the Temple Beth Israel, October 16th. I'm going to be really Zooming with the Dayton, the Greater Federation of Dayton, or Dayton's Greater Federation, with them on the 27th. But I'm also working on a new book, as I always am, and every month I write a blog. So I've written some new blogs. One of them is called Romance, Is It Real or Hollywood Creation? So that's one of the upcoming ones that you'll see in the blog. But so I'm working on a new book. I am working on a new book, and hopefully that'll be out sometime next summer.
It takes a lot to write a book. I mean, sitting down and thinking and outlining it, I give you a lot of credit. It's quite the undertaking.
Yeah, I am probably the most persistent person you've ever met. I don't know whether I'm insistent or just persistent, but I really have, and I'm also really kind of a loner, if you will. I have lots of friends. I shouldn't say I'm a loner, but I am a shy guy. So I'm pretty much kind of a introspective person. I don't seem that way right now.
No, you don't.
I know, but I am. And so for me, writing is instead of going to a therapist,
yes,
I can just write it all out, in a book and try to sell it. So that's always really helpful.
It's been said that when you write, it's a very cathartic experience.
It is, yeah. And I think if you take anything that's gone in your life not well,
yes,
you can rewrite it as you like.
Yes.
So, suddenly you can be incredibly good looking, or you can be, whatever you want to be, wealthy, successful, it's all good. It's all good.
Yes. In your book, Boca by Moonlight, which of the female characters are your favorite?
The female, I really love Sylvia. So she's the realtor, and she's the one who sort of is in on the whole Boca Raton society. She knows what everything means, and she's the one who's able to sort of navigate our heroes, our Jewish heroes, our three Jewish heroes through life. And so I really like Sylvia. She's sharp, and she's got it going on. So, yep.
And you think women would enjoy reading your book?
I do think they would.
As well as men?
Yeah, I do, because first of all, I think women know the story. They've been around enough men to know how often clueless they seem. And I've always heard women talk about how, I wish my husband would go out and meet somebody, and they don't mean another woman, they mean their friend. And so they're in trouble, making friends. And it's always a bit of a challenge. And so I think women it really resonates with women. In fact, a lot of my audience really are women. Women tend to read more than men do. And so I do hear from them a lot. And I know that the book will definitely resonate with them. They won't be surprised by anything they're reading. They'll go, aha, I knew it. See? So, yeah.
Is it difficult to get your book out into the world?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what's difficult. I'm a big fan of Mitch Albom, and I like Nicholas Sparks and Dan Brown. I like all those authors, but I don't have their name. And when you think about it, 4,500 ebooks are coming out every day. There are
Wow.
about 1.7 million books published a year. So you really have to sort of struggle and to find your place in the world. So the book isn't so hard as finding your audience, which is Adam, why I told you this group is so terrific, because I know that you've got 200,000 captured lives here who are interested in what you do, and I'm hoping that they'll be interested in what I do and interested in reading what I write.
That's our hope.
I hope so. Like I said, I'm a bar mitzvah boy. My family went to the Catskills. I was at Leonard's. I mean, what more do I have to do to prove that I'm one of the 200,000? I am. So I'm hoping that the book resonates and reaches. And it's doing actually very well on Amazon. So that's really good news too.
That is good news. That's great news.
Yeah.
What other things do you do besides writing? What things do you enjoy doing besides writing?
Well, I have a lot of friends. I go out. I enjoy the gym like you do. I don't have a bicycle. I don't do that here, but I do it in an air-conditioned gym because I live in Phoenix, Arizona.
Right.
And so, it gets kind of warm in the summer, but I like to work out. I like to do that. I used to have a dog. Unfortunately, we lost him a little while back. So I would, think about that too, coming again. But, all the things that everybody else does, what I like to do.
Yes. What else we see here? One of our members brought a comment says women are definitely more self-sufficient.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm sure that there are a couple of men out there who would disagree. But I do think women are much more self-sufficient. I see somebody who wrote, "Get a dog!" exclamation. Yeah. I have to think about that. Would love to get a dog.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
Ties you down.
Yeah, it does. But you know what's terrific about a dog? It gets you out of bed every morning to walk.
Sure.
And every evening you walk. And, dogs keep you active, physically fit. Have you ever had a pet, Adam?
I did. I had a purebred collie for a few years. That's back in the, after my dad passed away, we decided to get another member of the family. So we got a collie puppy and we brought him up. But he got messed up a little bit. My mom was not the easiest person, and she didn't understand dogs. And, one of the things that if you want to get a dog vicious, you isolate them from people when they come over the house. Yeah. And that's what my mom did. And unfortunately, the dog turned a little on the vicious side. And we gave him away. We thought was a good home. Yeah. But he had bitten a few people before. And unfortunately, he bit someone in that family. And they decided to put him down. I didn't have the heart to put him down. I thought maybe giving him to another home. We put him in a home in a farm somewhere. So it was tough. It was tough. It was a tough thing to do, to say goodbye to him, because I really was attached to him. But but I live in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, or a suburb of, which is Brassard, and it gets pretty chilly in the winter. And
chilly? It gets chilly?
More than chilly. It's frigid. I mean, we're talking about temperatures that could, in the winter and in its coldest, you can go like to -20 with a wind chill of -40, and it's like bone chilling, and you don't want to really take a walk and go out in that kind of weather. And
right.
So the weather here is not really ideal.
Well, it's
coming up here.
It's funny when you say chilly, Adam. I think about what we say in Phoenix. We always say it's a dry heat. It's like that's the kind of what people do when they live in these inclement climates sometimes.
Yes.
So somebody's asking me, is the book available for book clubs? You bet. And I should also mention the book is it's a Jewish Book Council selection. So that's always good too. So that the Jewish Book Council is sort of like a stamp of good housekeeping for a lot of books. So that's good.
Yeah, a couple more questions here. Isn't it unusual to find such a group of supportive men as in Boca? ? Isn't it unusual?
Well, I don't know. There are a lot of guys who are getting together at, for coffee and bagels and, in the morning. And I know a lot of guys do that. So, and they also play golf. So there are a lot of guys who play golf together. And so I think the trick about being supportive, I always say about men, it's a little bit different. We don't have sometimes the emotional intelligence. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't actually look at each other. If you think about it, we go to a sports arena and we look to the field and we spend our time talking to each other. We're not looking at each other. We're not making, eye contact. So I think when guys get together for coffee, or even when they play golf, there's always an opportunity for them to bond a little bit, more than going to sporting events, right?
Sure. And I think if they're going through or they've gone through similar experience, that they could have a commonality where they can relate to one another on a higher level.
Yeah.
I think that it all depends on what one experiences or one has experienced and what one is experiencing currently in their life is, I think the level as to how they relate to one another.
Yeah.
But, everybody's different.
But it can really be isolating if you're divorced or widowed. And in my book, 2 of the guys are divorced, 1 is widowed. And, one of them has been married 4 times.
Wow.
So it's like he's tried and tried and tried again.
Yeah.
And so that makes that always kind of like interesting.
That the late Larry King, CNN host, was married 8 times.
8 times, right.
Yes.
Right. Which is, I'm always like Mickey Rooney. He was married many times. Yes. And it's crazy. It's crazy.
I guess every marriage is a practice run for the next one, I suppose.
Right. Right. There's always something to learn, I guess, right?
Yeah, but there's something to say about, why were if he was married 8 times, take Larry King, why weren't the 7 previous ones successful? Unless some of them may have passed away. I don't know the whole story of every one, but, relationships take work.
They do.
I always said relationship is like a mirror. They're very fragile. Is it fragile or fragile?
Well, I think it's either way. I think
either
both
way. Okay, so I say this: relationships are very fragile, and I make an analogy that relationships like a mirror. If you look into a mirror, a perfect mirror, you see a perfect reflection of yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
However, if you drop the mirror and the mirror breaks or cracks, maybe put the mirror back together, put Scotch tape, cover up the cracks, but the mirror will always be cracked. And that's my metaphor for relationships. They're very fragile, and you have to realize that what you say or what you do could have a significant impact on your significant other. And, depends how sensitive they are, of course, but, they take work. Relationships take work. So what else we have here as far as questions? Wonderful comment about men not looking at each other.
Yeah. That resonated. That one resonated.
How did you learn so much about Boca Raton? Was a question.
Oh, yeah. Well, because my dad lived there.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time. My dad lived there 16 years. So he was married 16 years to his second wife.
Wow.
Which, was pretty amazing. That's a long marriage. First time was 38 years, second 16 years. And, I don't know if this is true, but in my family, the men marry for a long time. I think a lot of Jewish men do, if they're able to. If their wives don't kick them out, they tend to want to stay married. I don't think most guys, I think most men do want to stay married. So somebody says, tell me the story about the guy at the bus stop who was married. Oh, yeah. Well, the thing that's interesting that I talk about, one of the characters who's been married 4 times, I mentioned that before. Well, that's inspired by a guy. I used to live in the Bay Area, and I was sitting at a bus stop waiting to go back home. They have this Marin airporter. It takes you back to Marin from the airport. And I was sitting at the bus stop, and a guy was sitting next to me, and he started to tell me the story of his life. And, I'm a writer. I immediately scooched up right next to him and listened. And he told me his first wife he married for love, His second wife, he actually had an affair with her. He was a doctor. She was in his office. His third wife was somebody who he met at a club. He also left her. The fourth wife, he was in the middle of divorcing. And he said to me, and you know what the moral of the story is? And I said, no. He said, I should have never left the first wife. She's the only one who ever loved me. And I thought that was really powerful. So, of course, I wanted to make sure I got that in the book with one of the guys because, you could be in a relationship, married 4 times, and, you can realize that it's the first wife that may have loved you the most. Could be the second, might be the third or the fourth.
Right.
But one of them, hopefully one of them will love you, truly love you.
Yes.
And so that just happened with that story. That sort of caught my ear. So that's the kind of stuff that you'll find, in the book, that kind of a sentimentality, if you will.
Yeah. What other speaking engagements do you have in the future? Do you have any other speaking engagements?
Well, I talked a little bit about Dayton. I talked a little bit about Skokie. So I'll be doing those 2. I've got a couple of other things in the pipeline in Phoenix. And so we'll see what happens. I should tell you, I've lived in Chicago. I've lived in Detroit.
Wow.
I've lived in St. Louis. And I've lived in Buffalo. And I've lived in the Bay Area. And now I live in Phoenix. So I've lived in a lot of places. And so I'm kind of lucky to have, have been around the country. But I also have a lot of friends who live in Florida. And so, I'm hoping to go out to those communities as well to talk about the book and connect. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
When you mentioned those cities, they resonated with me because some of those cities, like Buffalo, Chicago, they can tend to be quite cold in the winter too at times. Maybe not as cold and as blustery as Montreal, but Buffalo, in fact, of recent years, I heard got clobbered with some major winter storms.
I was there in 1976, I think it was, or 76, through their major blizzard where they shut the place down for a week and you couldn't get through. But, I got to tell you, Detroit is one of my favorite places ever that I ever lived. I lived there 18 years, Detroit. And I know a lot of people will go, Detroit, Michigan, what? Detroit is an amazing place with a very amazing, it's an amazing community. It's a wonderful Jewish community, but it's a wonderful community of people, Jewish or not. And I worked in Catholic healthcare for 18 years, and I also worked at the Detroit Medical Center. My first career, I was a healthcare administrator. So Detroit's just an amazing place. I love it. And I lived in Chicago too. I lived in Highland Park, where they recently had that Highland Park shooting, maybe a month or 2 months ago in the parade. So I worked at that. I worked at the Highland Park Hospital. So I sort of have been around the country, if you will.
Yeah.
And
One of our members asked, why did you leave Detroit?
Well, I left Detroit to move to the Bay Area. At the time, my husband...
Bay Area is where?
In Marin, San Francisco.
Oh, okay, California.
Yeah. So my husband, who I'm with, I've been with him 32 years. Remember I said long-term relationship? Yeah. We've been married 13, but I've been with him 32 years. And he sold his business and moved. So I moved with him. But I worked for a company that was a corporate office. So I was able to travel. And, I was one of the first remote workers back in 2000, where I worked remotely and all of that. I did that for 10 years out of a corporate office. But yeah, I'm really kind of a lucky guy to be able to have done that. But boy, I still love going back to Michigan. I have a lot of family there still.
Yeah. One person writes, why did you move around so much?
I couldn't make any friends. That's really, no, that is not true. I'm just joking. I don't know. It just seemed to, in your career, I moved here for a job to Phoenix, the Bay Area, moved for a company. But really, I lived in Detroit 18 years. That's a long
time.
It is a long time. It is a long time. And, every day of my mother's life before she died, she would say, when are you moving back to New York City? And I never did. But, and I would go down there, and they were always trying to woo me back to New York City. So one time, and this is kind of a minor but interesting story, they wanted to go to brunch at the top of the World Trade Center, Windows in the World. Oh. And there were a couple of times I could never get in there, and I never remembered why. And then one day I showed up, and he looked at me and he said, you can't go upstairs in sneakers. We have a dress code. So I never got up to Windows of the World, but it was kind of because I was wearing sneakers. And my mother really was like, when are you going to wear a jacket? And, to this day, I still don't wear a sport coat. But you know how Jewish mothers are. They want you to dress properly.
Of course.
Yeah.
Did you have any Yiddish in your family? I mean,
I think I've told you before, my grandmother in the Bronx was a kosher caterer. She survived the Depression with 4 children. My grandfather had Parkinson's, who was institutionalized at 39. Wow. So she had to support the family. And so she had a little store, Graber's, and she prepared chickens and blintzes and potato knishes and all that and sold them out of the store. So, they always say she was always plucking chickens. They would always say, plucking chickens. But she was, so I know a little bit of Yiddish, and you and I have talked a little bit of Yiddish before.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Right. So, I know a little bit of that. But on the other side, I'm Sephardic. My mother's family is from Turkey.
Oh.
From Salonika.
So I would never have guessed.
Yeah, so we're Sephardic. Well, if you saw my brother, you'd guess. He's dark. Yeah. It's like 2 baby. My mother was dark, my father not.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, that was considered a mixed marriage when they were young.
Yeah.
They thought my mother was not Jewish, because they were Ashkenazi. They said, she's not Jewish. Anyway. But yeah.
Here's a question, a couple. Do you cook, and does it run in the family?
I do cook, not great. I don't like to cook, because if you cook, somebody's got to clean up. I don't like to do that. I'd rather go out and eat or bring it in. But boy, I like to eat. I really do. That's one thing I do like. And does cooking run in the family? No. And the family doesn't run. So that's the other thing. We don't run. They're not very athletic. So, Anyway.
Any final thoughts?
No, I just want to thank you, Adam, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And I really want to thank the folks on, who are part of the Jewish Humor Facebook group. I mean, you guys have been terrific. I do post, and everybody usually answers, and I've really seen that, they've stepped up to the plate. They've helped out with book sales. I see it, and I'm very grateful. And hopefully, I'll still be a presence on the website. You'll still be seeing me, folks. I'm not going away just because I did a Facebook group thing. I mean, Adam knows. I talk to Adam maybe once a month, and, we connect, and he's a terrific guy, and I think we're very lucky to have Adam. So, I'm just going to do a real quick clap. That's for you, for everything you do, because you're really terrific.
A good clap for you, because, to be honest, I'm always honest, but you've been my most loyal and faithful advertiser and sponsor of all the advertisers and sponsors I've had since I've started the group. So I'm very grateful for that, and grateful to you. And for Jewish Humor members who are in a rush to say Shana Tova and Rosh Hashanah, I'm a bit of a stickler with time. I always recall that, and the late Andy Rooney on CBS 60 Minutes saying that we're always in a rush to move time along. Enjoy today and cherish today. Rosh Hashanah is in 72 hours from now. So, we got still Shabbat tomorrow to go through, and tomorrow's a big day in the Jewish Humor. You mentioned earlier you were a fan of Seinfeld. Well, tune in tomorrow, because tomorrow happens to be Jason Alexander's 63rd birthday. So I'll be doing a big tribute to him and Seinfeld. There'll be a lot of clips with funny Seinfeld clips in there to make people laugh and enjoy. And we got Shabbos Friday night and Saturday, and Sunday is Music Sunday, and then it's Rosh Hashanah on Sunday night. But people are always in a rush, you know. I don't know what it is with the. Do the Gentiles also wish each other like a Happy New Year 3, 4, 5 days in advance? I guess they do. I don't know.
I think they do. Yeah, I think they probably do. You know, Adam, I forgot to mention, and this is the last point I forgot to say.
Okay.
If you send me an email at brad@bradgraber.com, brad@bradgraber.com, I will send you a link to a free book. So it won't be Boca, but it'll be a free book of my collection of essays. So I forgot to mention that. If you could just, I just want to, again, if you send an email to brad@bradgraber.com, I promise I will send you a link and I will put you on my blog list so you can get to see my funny blogs.
Okay, maybe we can put that link somewhere, in the group.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what are you doing the rest of the day? By you, it's 3 hours behind. It's almost 8 p.m. Eastern.
I know. I'm going to go eat dinner. I promised myself dinner. I'm going to Culver's.
What are you going to have at Culver's?
Do you have Culver's?
No, in Canada, we don't have no Culver's schmalvers.
It's a fast food hamburger and great ice cream place.
Oh.
So, yeah, I'm going to head over there and have dinner.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What's the weather like there in Phoenix today?
It is 97.
Wow.
It's going to be triple digits the rest of the week. It's never overcast. It's overcast now. We've actually had a little bit of rain, but it's never overcast. So it's called the Valley of the Sun. So it's always bright. If anybody has, that need to be in sunlight, this is a place to be.
Yeah, here by me, it's 56 degrees Fahrenheit currently, and it's going down to 46 degrees tonight. And, fall officially starts, by the way, in approximately an hour and 11 minutes from now. I think it's 9:11 p.m. that fall officially starts. But it does start getting cooler here in my area, and it already is cool, so.
Well, in Phoenix, when it's 75 degrees, you need a coat because everybody here, their blood is thinned. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, you see people wearing scarves and, hats, and it's really cold.
Yeah, well, pretty soon here, we're going to have to start using the heating. Haven't yet used it, but starting to get a little bit cool in the house. So, that's the way it is.
Great.
Weather, can't control it.
Good. Hey, it's a joy to talk to you.
Likewise. Be well. God bless.
Okay.
And
God bless you too.
We'll put a link to the to your blog or to your website, to your email address.
Email address. Yeah, we'll send you a book.
Okay. Terrific.
All right, my friend.
Everybody, I'm not going to wish you Shana Tova yet. I'm sorry. When I'll do it. But Sunday. It's not Rosh Hashanah yet. I always tell people, you know what? When it's my birthday, I hate like hell when people start wishing me a happy birthday days in advance. It makes me feel older than I already am. Wish me a happy birthday on the birthday. I feel the same with all these holidays. Let's do it on the day of. Anyway, I'm a stickler with time, so everything with the time. But tomorrow, we're going to have a lot of fun with Jason Alexander, Seinfeld, especially that episode called The Contest. It's got to be the funniest episode of all time. So, you ever seen that contest, that episode, The Contest? I
don't remember, but I'll be watching it tomorrow.
I'll refresh your memory. It's the one where his mother catches him doing, he saw some glamour magazines and, he didn't anticipate his mother coming home that early.
And she's wonderful. She's so funny. I think she recently died. Maybe a month or two back. Yes. She was brilliant.
Yes. Yeah. But we'll be posting that tomorrow.
Okay.
So everybody enjoy the rest of the evening, and God bless everybody. God bless Brad. He's a great guy, and we look forward to more of your book.